Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Intentional Current. Today we're going to be discussing a very heavy issue, but also a very important issue of gun violence and gun control. I'm sure at this point we've all heard about the mass shootings that have taken place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Buffalo, New York, Uvalde, Texas, where children were slaughtered. It's frustrating hearing about all of these shootings, one after another after another. This has been going on for so long now. And quite frankly, there are so many more mass shootings that we just don't hear about because there's so many that the media at times chooses which ones they'll give more attention to. Think about that for a second. Think about that. There's so many, we're at a point right now where there's so many mass shootings happening in our country that our media literally at times has to choose which ones they will and which ones they won't give maximum attention to. That's insane. And it is terrible seeing the consistent inaction being taken by our government in regards to this. It's inexcusable. Fortunately, there seems to be some kind of movement finally taking place in our government, in our Congress, to address the issue of gun reform and gun control. The House of Representatives just passed a bill last week, H.R. 7910, also known as the Protecting Our Kids Act. It's a relatively moderate bill, but it has some good stuff in it nonetheless that will definitely save lives. It puts a ban on bump stocks, which are basically used to turn semi-automatic weapons into automatic machine guns. It bans ghost guns. It raises the minimum age to buy certain semi-automatic weapons to 21. It bans high-capacity magazines. It helps fund some local governments' buyback programs. Yeah, there's good things in this bill. It's a relatively moderate bill, but there are some good things, and at this point, something is better than nothing. There hasn't been any kind of significant legislation on gun reform that's passed Congress in almost 30 years. That's almost 30 years. That's insane. And yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't keep on fighting for the other changes that need to take place after we passed something, but at the same time, still, consider it noteworthy that there's things in the works that something looks like it might get passed. The bad news is, unfortunately, this particular bill will probably not end up passing the Senate because as moderate as it is, it's still probably too progressive to pass the Senate. And right now in our split Senate, the Democrats probably won't get enough of the Republican votes they need to stop a filibuster. But there's a silver lining. Even in the Senate, there are discussions right now that are taking place to come up with some kind of response to the just out of control gun violence that's been taking place for a while now. And there's negotiations. It's led by Senator Chris Murphy for the most part. He's taking the lead on a lot of these negotiations in the Senate. There's there's some kind of bipartisan framework that just broke out in the news today that the Senate is now discussing. So that's good news. Some kind of initial, it's still in the early stages, but there is some kind of bipartisan framework that they're trying to at least plant the seed for and begin to design, which is a beautiful thing. It's not quite as progressive as the House bill, which still wasn't even that progressive, but there still are some good things in the bipartisan framework that is being discussed in the Senate that will still, once again, benefit us, benefit society, help save lives. There's talks about enhanced background checks for gun buyers under the age of 21. There's talks of helping incentivize states that choose to implement red flag laws, possible funding of those states. There's talks of addressing mental health, very important, addressing mental health. There's talks of addressing and putting more energy into school safety. So, yeah, not everything that we're, pushing for, and certainly can be a lot more, and we should absolutely keep on fighting for more. But this is also very noteworthy, and that should not be forgotten. I'm not, shouting for joy yet, but to hear that there is some kind of something that seems to be moving in the Senate in some kind of a positive direction is, I feel like, a reason for, some kind of hope and optimism. This is, it shows you how much of a strong, tight grip the NRA and the gun lobby and gun manufacturers still have over our Congress, that they've managed to block any kind of significant gun reform for so long. But that just goes to that just speaks to the larger problem at hand, which is money and corruption in politics, that absolutely needs a change, not just for gun reform, but for things like trying to get universal health care, universal education up to college, mandatory minimum wage of $15 an hour. I personally think it should be 20. But yeah, there's so many things that money in politics corrupt and needs to be addressed. And this just is one example. Personally, I think that anybody in the House or Senate that does not support any kind of basic gun reform, and they're up for re-election in the midterms, they should be, without a doubt, voted out of office. The polls show the American people support some kind of basic gun reform. The polls have consistently showed that the American people support some kind of moderate gun reform. And for the politicians that we have in office right now to vote otherwise, or to push for otherwise, lights been off. For politicians that we have in office right now to vote for otherwise, to push for otherwise, just go to show you, the corruption right now that's in our government. So yeah, guys, if you live in a state that has a senator that does not support any kind of basic gun legislation, gun reform, or if you're in a district where you have a representative that doesn't support any kind of basic gun reform, you know what to do come midterms, guys. But yeah, let's try to focus on the good news as much as possible or the hopeful news as much as possible, and that is that there are finally negotiations happening, what seems to be real substantive negotiations happening within our government, within our Congress, in a somewhat of a bipartisan way. So fingers crossed, guys, fingers crossed. Let's hope for the best. Thank you.